Let us celebrate the much anticipated release of the Monster Hunter Rise game and a franchise that has revolutionized how we think about monster design and how game mechanics are shaped by said monster design. By not talking about the creature design in this game?
Rejected!
Maybe I didn't think this through. Look, it's just that in this channel we talk about location design in video games and other media.
Rejected!
Oh, come on, it's going to be fun. The location designs on Monster Hunter, albeit limited, are just as charming as all other aspects of the game. This is by no means a comprehensive or complete guide on Japanese classic architecture, but we'll get to see some elements and how they were applied in this fantastical world. Sounds good? Great, let's go. So let's talk about the town that serves as the game's waiting room, as the interactive, highly detailed main menu. Here you can restock on important items, select your next mission, customize equipment like armor, weapons, and of course put your adorable animal companions into silly outfits. Ooh, by the way, the fact that I can customize my in-game dog to make it look like my real-life dog, just the kind of thing that warms my heart. So the first things that you might notice while traversing this town, and by you might notice I actually mean the first thing I noticed, is the topography. So much verticality in this town. It's visually very interesting and inviting to have something filling up the screen in different eye levels. This makes you want to go to the next visual punchline, to the next. This is basically what platformer levels do to invite you to keep you entranced to go further. That and also the imminent threat of falling to your death. But the verticality is also very consistent with Japanese territory. So Japanese topography has a lot of mountains and hills. Let's look at Japan's geographical location for a second. You see how Japan is right in the middle of a few tectonic plates? Well, as tectonic plates move, they tend to rub each other and overlap. All that friction and movement causes earthquakes and tsunamis, and other natural occurrences that are very prevalent in Japan. But geographically, all of that tectonic plate overlapping causes ridges known as mountains. All that tectonic plate rubbing also causes volcanoes. We're not talking about that today. So Japan's territory is about 70% mountains, and this really informs Japanese visual sensitivities as well as functionality in their urban design of settlements and other architecture. Let's work our way from the bottom up. I mean the bottom of a building, from the ground to the roof. For classic Japanese buildings, you usually see a structure that elevates the ground floor level, creating a distance from the natural ground or soil, as opposed to, say, a slab that rests directly in contact with the natural soil. This is useful in helping with humidity that comes from the building being in direct contact with the ground, as well as preventing floodings from entering the construction, which is very likely to happen in a country with tsunamis like Japan. And yeah, the tsunamis, as I said, also comes from tectonic plates rubbing. You also see these beautiful and intricate wooden structures from floor to ceiling. Wood is easier to mend and modify than stone. It's both sturdy and yet very flexible. Remember, thanks to the rubbing of the tectonic plates, there are a lot of earthquakes, so you need that flexibility for the building to withstand movement. Wood is also easier to give maintenance to. The Japanese are all about maintenance in their buildings. What, you thought that beautiful old buildings have the same wooden floors and columns as they did 500 years ago? Come on. For Japanese constructions that are centuries old, many of the elements like the columns, flooring, and ceiling have been replaced and redone many times over since when they were first built. Humidity can really punish wood, but you need that flexibility and sturdiness that wood grants you, so maintenance is a must for Japanese classical architecture. You also get these amazing roofs with this four-way sloping in each of the building's floors. This detail of the roofs again emphasizes the leveling across the verticality of the building. Instead of having this tower that just goes up and down and makes your eye go up and down with it, you have this sort of visual stuff, if you will, with the sloping of roofs on every level of the building, making a tower seem like a succession of different visual punchlines with every level that is highlighted with the roofing. And then you get the details like the top crests of the roof. Like in this building, you have these amazing dragon head carvings on the structural beam itself, with some adorable scaling along the crest of that structural beam. This sort of detail is another beautiful characteristic of Japanese mastery of materials, especially wood. Other than that detail, you see a lot of monster-inspired decorative details all over this town. The town's lanterns look bunny-like. There are these horns or tusks that are used as both ornaments in the crests on the top of construction and roofings, and also used as weights in different shops. You get the feeling that this town's main economic activity has to do with selling, buying, and refining monster-related goods, like scales, fangs, claws, and furs, which makes sense when you consider that is exactly what you're harvesting during your missions. What appears to be the most important, ostentatious, and elevated building in the town is not the house of the richest family or a religious temple or a governmental facility, but it appears to be some sort of smelting furnace workshop, presumably a place to refine weapons and armor derived from monster parts. Hierarchy in urban design makes the town's preoccupation and activities very apparent. Think of it this way: if the town is a fishing town, streets, marketplaces, and housing conform perpendicularly to the shore for better communication and easy access to the town's most important economical activity, which is fishing. In a mining town, the same occurs towards the mine. So, in the case of a manufacturing and refining town like this one, all roads point towards the production line. As for the specific look and feel of the location, I love the fantasy and playful decisions that they took, based off traditional Japanese architecture that has the characteristics that I already pointed out. You have these permanently blooming sakura trees all over, often forming the structure of buildings or shops. Sometimes you get furniture from these somehow still living trees, and in structures like flooring and walls, you get these highly textured tree streaks or tree barks that sometimes gets highlighted with chipped painting that only adds to the rustic and rugged feeling. And so we can see how the combination of all the wood textures, chipping of the paints, different kinds of decorations, textiles, make the world that much believable, as if this is a bustling city where people are coming and going and commerce is always going on. Makes it look charming and lively. And just as a little side note or detour, I have to stop for a second and talk about the texture that we find in the covering of the roofs along the city. You see this texture that kind of looks like shingles, but also looks like scales or like snake skin? Like, again, the world building not only stops with the props or the decoration, it also comes to the textures, where the designers of this world had to carefully put this kind of texture to insinuate maybe that everything that this city utilizes for construction has something to do with monsters, and I think it's very clever. So, as the last thing I'd like to mention, there are these little stations that you have on the missions when you go out on the field. You get these fabric huts, and these are a little bit of outliers when it comes to Japanese architecture, as these stations are their own particular thing. You got fabric to build your surfaces, your walls and roofs, and ropes for the majority of the structure. This means that you are using tension to distribute the weight of the structure itself, instead of multiple columns supporting the weight. So it functions like a circus tent, basically. Tension and the ropes carry the load of the fabrics, and it's easy to set up and easy to turn down, making the elements perfectly reusable to set them up elsewhere if necessary. This is curious to me because instead of like a quote-unquote proper station like a wooden cabin, they have a much more mobile tents set up for the hunters as their base. So I'm guessing the idea is to express that in the wild, where the monsters roam freely, you need something easy to set up, easy to tear down, in case you need to get the hell out of there. And it might suggest that these tents are moved to follow herds or different specific monsters. I find it very interesting that the developers thought that little bit of real storytelling to make something as innocuous like the basis of your missions to make sense within the world of Monster Hunter. I guess that's all I have for you today. I'm working on a big video coming up. Can you guess what it is? One of my very favorite franchises, that's what it is. In the meantime, be sure to check out my other videos Please excuse me if I came off somewhat disorganized in this video. I'm trying to make it better. Anyway, I'm Plum Powder, and thank you for watching. Bye-bye.